Ladies and gentlemen, are you a Christian or are you considering becoming one? Then this video is definitely a must watch for you. And at the end of this video, 3 things are gonna happen to you. You're going to understand why most people are abandoning church, why most individuals are leaving church. They don't want anything to do with church. The second thing you're going to understand is why I titled this video, I love God but hate church. And the last thing that is going to happen to you is that you're either going to abandon church or you're going to increase or strengthen your faith in God. And because this is such a complex subject, I had to script everything down for the sake of articulacy and proper communication. So I am just going to read from my computer. You know, I've been thinking about the faces we see. The poor, the broken, the elderly, the single moms, the people working 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. Then I think about men and women sitting in rooms such as this, with private jets, mansions, and influence built by promises they made to the people we mentioned in the first category. And I want to say something raw and simple. If you feel used by church, you're not wrong. You might not just be tired, you might be exploited. Kenneth Copeland has built a media empire preaching prosperity gospel for over 50 years, claiming blessings for those who give, yet he lives in opulence, private jets, millions in cash, while urging followers to sow seeds of money in hopes of divine return. In my honest opinion, I think individuals such as Kenneth Copeland are living proof that the devil exists. Furthermore, their actions suggest they think there is no God, or at least a God that will punish them. Joyce Meyer is the second example. Joyce Meyer commands massive audiences. Conferences fill stadiums. But she, too, has been tied to prosperity teachings and a powerful lifestyle that I and many others find troubling. Even as she distances herself from specific scandals, like condemning sexual abuse at Gateway Church, the image remains. Millions followed, real survivors were forgotten, vulnerability was ignored. Now my question is, when the powerful avoid speaking up for the abused, what message does that send to the wounded in the pews? Joel Osteen is the third example. Joel Osteen perhaps is the most familiar face of modern megachurch culture. His weekly preaching is like a feel-good movie, polished, inviting, hopeful, but the reality behind the scenes cuts deeper. In 2017, as Hurricane Harvey flooded Houston, Osteen's Lakewood Church remained closed. Thousands needed shelter. Other places opened their doors. People criticized him for offering prayer instead of open sanctuary. Only after backlash did Lakewood Church become a collection site, not a shelter. Can you imagine that during the COVID pandemic, Lakewood accepted $4.4 million in PPP loans, taxpayer money, despite Joel's initial denial and his own immense personal wealth estimated at around $50 million. And do you know that in 2014, $600,000 went missing under Joel's watch? In 2021, a plumber repairing a toilet wall discovered hundreds of envelopes filled with cash and checks, the very donations people believed were lost. Tell me what this is, if not religious fraud. It's such a heartbreaking process to watch poor people being scammed. They are told they are poor because they don't trust God. So they should give even their last dollar. And maybe, just maybe, they will get rich too. It is a disturbing psychological game. Ladies and gentlemen, these are not ancient scandals. These are not fringe pastors in remote corners. These are modern, global, televised, holy men preaching prosperity, profiting from poverty, telling the vulnerable that their lack is spiritual, not systematic. When the pastors live in mansions, ride in luxury cars, and refuse to make their church a place of refuge in disasters, that is not faith building. That is spiritual exploitation. It's not enough to pray louder. I want to say that again because maybe somebody has not heard it clearly. It is not enough to pray louder. What we need is truth. So stick with me because this isn't just about scandals or money. It's about what happens when the oppressed get told they simply didn't pray hard enough, while the pastors pray from private jets. In this video, I want us to expose these things, not out of malice, but for the sake of clarification. I want us to distinguish a true church from a religious enterprise. Our goal is to show those struggling with their theological framework that it is okay to doubt, to question, and if things do not make sense to you, there is another way to be real with God without necessarily going to church. See, I have a very unique and complex relationship with God. I don't always submit to Him or blindly follow or obey. I do question His intentions all the time. And when I feel disappointed, I don't repress my feelings towards Him. I do curse His name, and sometimes I disregard His existence. Some people call this a lack of conviction, but I call it sincerity. And this is one of the qualities that the church discourages nowadays. And as a consequence of discouraging such qualities, it has become very, very difficult to be a participant of any particular church or any particular denomination. I don't hate the idea of church, like community, worship, all of that. But the way church has become these days, it's not something I want to be part of. Look, I have seen pastors preaching about holiness and truth, then turning around and living double lives. And the worst part, some churches protect them. They cover it up. Like keeping a good image is more important than being honest. Honestly, how can you trust a place like that? And then there's the judgment. You walk in and people stare at you. You are too different, too loud, too quiet. Your clothes, your past, your story. It's like if you don't fit the church mold, you are not welcome. That is not what Jesus was like. He sat, walked, and ate with people nobody wanted. The prostitutes, the tax collectors, Roman elites. He didn't shame them. He loved them. But church people, sometimes they act like they are better than the rest of us. And don't even get me started on the money. It feels like everything is about giving, giving, giving. Big buildings, big stages, expensive lights. And you're sitting there wondering if they even see the people struggling in the back row. Imagine you walk in needing help, needing answers, and most of the time, you just get a show. Some sermons don't even talk about real life stuff. They don't touch pain, depression, addiction, racism, injustice. They just talk at you, say, pray harder, trust God. But what about when your life is falling apart and prayer doesn't fix it in a day? And when people get hurt in church, emotionally, even sexually, the pain gets brushed aside. People are told to forgive, move on, do not ruin the church's name. But what about the victims? What about their justice? It really hurts to see that it's not the world that hurts these innocent, naive, and vulnerable individuals, but the people who say, I am here in the name of God, and turn around and use their pain to profit. These pastors see people walk into a church broken, desperate, scared. People who just want hope, a job, a healing, a fresh start. And instead of feeding their souls, these pastors sell them promises. They say, God told me if you give a seed of $1,000, your miracle is coming. And please don't question the man of God. And they say it with such confidence that people believe it. Perhaps it's because they trust them. Because they are standing on the stage holding a Bible. But behind the preaching, these pastors are counting offerings, not souls. They are using emotional manipulation, telling the sick people that the reason why they are not healed is because their faith wasn't strong enough or their offering wasn't big enough. And people, they give what they don't have. They take loans, sell land, skip meals, because they believe the man at the altar has a direct line to God. But the truth is that some of these men are just skilled performers. They know how to make you cry, how to make you shout, how to make you feel like this is your moment. Then they take your money and drive off in brand new cars while you go home wondering why your miracle didn't come. That is not faith. That is spiritual abuse. That is emotional fraud. That is not how Jesus moved. Jesus never charged people to be healed. He never passed a basket after preaching. He fed people, not drained them. He didn't need a suit, a mic, or a stage. Tell me, how is it that the pastor is driving a brand new car, wearing designer suits, living in a mansion, but the people sitting in the pews, they are walking to church. They are skipping meals. They are choosing between giving an offering or buying food for their kids. How did we get here? How did the man who's supposed to serve the people end up living off the people? Every Sunday people give what they don't have. They drop coins in baskets with trembling hands. They give out of fear, not faith. Because they are told if they don't give, God won't bless them. They are told things like, God will multiply your seed. Your breakthrough is tied to your giving. Or the worst one, if you are still poor, it's because your faith isn't strong enough. But here's the thing. The only one getting richer is the man with the microphone. You look around and the church has gold-plated pulpits, LED screens, new air conditioning, a VIP section for special guests, but right outside those walls, people are sleeping on the ground. Children are going to school without shoes. Widows are crying because they cannot afford medicine. And you're telling me this is what Jesus wanted? No, man. No. Jesus fed the 5,000 people and he did not charge them. He washed his disciples' feet and he did not demand they wash his. He rode a donkey, not a Range Rover. He gave everything, including his life, in the most selfless manner and took nothing in return. That is the God I believe in. Not this new version where the pastor eats steak while the masses can't even afford maize flour. And please, don't get me wrong. I am not jealous. I am not hateful. I just want these holy places to start acting accordingly. If you're truly called by God, then serve like Jesus. Give more than you take. Walk with the people, not above them. Because right now, too many churches look like kingdoms and too many pastors act like kings. This is not how churches were supposed to be ran. Churches are not meant to be businesses. In the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 44 to 45, yes, the very Bible you preach from, this is what the Bible says. It says in the book of Acts, chapter 2, verse 44 to 45, that all the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Anyone who had need. The Bible says believers had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone. Not one particular person, but anyone who had need. This is the blueprint of the Church of Jesus Christ. The early church wasn't about wealth, fame, or flashy titles. It was about community. It was about equality. It was about making sure no one was left behind. If someone was hungry, they fed them. If someone was homeless, they made space for them. If someone was struggling, they shared what they had with them. It wasn't about hierarchy. It was about family. Everyone gave, yes, but not so that one man can live in luxury while the rest suffered. They gave so that everyone had enough. That is how the church is supposed to be. A safe place, a healing place, a place where burdens are shared, not added. Where people come in broken and leave supported. The church should be the first place you go when you lose your job, when your kids are hungry, when your rent is due, when your mental health is failing, not because they will preach at you, but because they will help you, truly help you, through real systems, through programs, through support, love, prayer, and action. Action. That is what Jesus molded. That is what the disciples lived. That is what we were called to continue. And that is the church I believe in. Not the broken version we mostly see, but the one Jesus dreamed of. The one where no one is left hungry. No one is left alone. But in modern churches, you'll hear an hour of preaching on sowing seeds and giving tithes, but you won't hear where the money went. God's church is supposed to reflect his heart. And God cares about people. He cares about the hungry, the homeless, the sick, the tired, the broken. And if we cannot agree on theology, can we at least agree that no one should go to sleep hungry after sitting through a 2-hour sermon? Because as much as we like using Jesus as a symbol of spiritual epitome, Jesus was equally logical by feeding and healing masses without testing their faith. And guys, I don't know if you've ever noticed this. There is another disturbing aspect about the church. How it has successfully failed to evolve over thousands of years. Jesus is famously known for challenging old laws and doctrines to a point that the Pharisees confused him for being anti-Moses. And thanks to him, we now have the New Testament. I can't believe that technology has changed, education has changed, how we think about life, justice, health, relationships, all that has changed. But church, same structure, same tone, same fear-based theology, same rules dressed in new clothes. They keep adding programs, new ministries, conferences, events, but under it all, it's the same system, the same messages, the same way of thinking. I am not talking about changing God. God doesn't change, but our understanding of Him, our perspective, our interpretation of His word, they should grow. But try bringing a fresh interpretation of a Bible verse into some churches. You'll get called rebellious or a heretic or told, this is how we've always done it. Exactly. And that is the problem. The early church was radical. They shook up systems. They challenged tradition. They moved with the spirit, not with tradition. But today's church, it's safe, rigidly structured, predictable, boring, and redundant. Instead of asking new questions, we recycle old sermons. Instead of listening to God's fresh voice, we repeat old lines. Instead of creating new systems for real-life struggles, we build more programs to distract from the fact that the core hasn't changed. I mean, what happened to revelations? Are they still occurring? We still preach to people but don't empower them. We still use fear more than freedom. We still avoid hard conversations about mental health, sexuality, politics, abuse, race, trauma. We still judge more than we listen. We still focus on appearance more than authenticity. And when people leave church to find God for themselves, we label them lost. When the truth is that they are just tired of being stuck. They want a faith that evolves, not away from truth, but deeper into it. A living God deserves a living church, not a dead system hiding under new lights. We need a church that is not afraid to grow, to question, to listen, to heal, to reinterpret all things through new wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, having said all this, I am convinced that the only way to survive this spiritual ruin is to abandon any church that manifests the following signs. If you walk into a place every Sunday and leave feeling smaller, less worthy, more judged than healed, that is not church. That is spiritual suffocation. If you have to pretend every week to be accepted, you're told to submit when you raise honest questions. If you're pouring your soul, and money, but nobody sees your pain. Nobody checks on you and your family. Nobody even knows your name. Then why are you still going there? You have no reason to stay in a church that is draining you emotionally, mentally, and financially. Perhaps you're scared to leave because they told you that leaving church is leaving God. But let me tell you something. Let me tell you the truth. God is not in the building. He is not the pulpit or the cross. God is with you wherever you are. You don't need to sit in a pew to be close to Him. You don't need a pastor to connect you to Him. You don't need to fake a hallelujah when your heart is breaking. Sometimes walking away from church is the bravest spiritual decision you will ever make, because you are not walking away from God. You are walking away from what God never intended. You were never meant to sit under leaders who manipulate your emotions. You are never meant to be silent while the powerful live large and the congregation stays hungry. You are never meant to feel like your questions are sins, like your doubts disqualify you, like your trauma is your fault. If church has become a place that shames your past, controls your future, and ignores your present, fucking leave right now, man. Fucking leave. Look, we are not here to sugarcoat anything. We are not here to pretend like church hasn't had people, because the truth of the matter is it has hurt lots of people in the past and still is hurting more people. And many of us have stayed silent for way too long. But I'm done pretending that everything under the label of church is holy. If a place is built on power, pride, and profit, it is not the house of God. And if church costs you your peace and your money, then maybe it's time to walk away and meet God outside the noise. We need churches that feed the poor before they fund the pastor. We need churches that reflect Jesus, not just talk about Him. And until we get that, it's okay to step back. It's okay to question. It is okay to heal on your own terms. And if this message spoke to you, like, share, subscribe to this channel for more of these videos, because, ladies and gentlemen, I'm fucking back. And this time around, we are going to expose lots and lots of things that church and these religious conglomerates, conglomerates? Yeah, I don't know how to say that word properly, but religious conglomerates do not want you to know. And guys, if this is such a difficult decision for you to make, I understand. It's gonna take time for some people to transition from where they are right now to where they need to be, because these people, these hyenas lacking in the environments of church, have scammed people for way too long. And maybe it's time we just expose everything and maybe save a few souls. Yeah, the truth is the only thing that is gonna set you free. Guys, like I said, share, like, subscribe. Let's see you in the next video. Peace.